So let's get started. So to begin with, I'll introduce you to the Q Exchange project team. So my name is Tanya Mason. I'm Q's Community and Collaborative Change Manager. I recognise a number of faces and names, so some of you may have seen or spoken to me before. We're also going to be joined today by the rest of the project team. So we have Darren Wright, who's not on the call just yet, but he is our Strategy and Development Lead here at Q. We have Beth Banfield, who's our Programme Officer, Louise Smith, who's our Marketing and Communications Manager, and Sarah Koo, who's our Programme and Events Coordinator. And I imagine that a number of you, if you do go on to apply for Q Exchange, will get to know Beth and Sarah very well. So yeah, again, a very warm welcome to you today. Thank you for making the time. Next slide, please. So in the time that we're together today, we're hoping to give you some really helpful information on Q Exchange. There's lots to talk about. We won't be able to cover all of it, but hopefully we're going to cover the most important bits. So on the screen, you'll see the agenda for today's call. We'll be beginning with giving you an overview of the Q Exchange application process. I'm sure a number of you have applied for Q Exchange before, but there'll be a number of you who haven't, so we're hoping that that will be helpful. And we're going to go on to just a few hints and tips about how to write a funding bid. And we're then going to talk about this year's theme, and Darren will be talking to you about that, hopefully. And then we'll end with a few key resources that we hope will be useful in submitting your bids. And we will have some time for a Q&A at the end of the call. So do bear with us for that at the very end. And then in the name of improvement, we'll be asking you for some feedback before we close at the end of the call. So going on to the next slide, I'm going to, you can hear some background noise, is that right? Okay, I'm sorry about that. Is that any better? Hopefully it's not too distracting. I'll see what I can do. I'm actually going to be handing over now to Beth and Sarah, who are going to be talking to you about the application process. So I'll have a look at my microphone in the meantime. But over to Sarah and Beth.
Super, thank you so much, Tanya. So yes, we're going to run you through the application process, so you just get an insight into how it works. But there is all the information on the website, and you can of course have a look at that later and take a bit of time to read through, because we do understand that sometimes all these things, a lot of information comes at you, you just can't remember everything. So we on to the next slide, please, Sarah. Thank you so much. So the application process, when you go to our website, the Q page, if you hover over the Get Involved tab at the top, you'll see this lovely drop-down menu. And on the left there, you can see Q Exchange. It's highlighted in the purple box. So if you click onto that, then you'll get taken through into the Q Exchange pages. So to lead a project, you do need to be a Q member. So everyone can see these pages, but you won't be able to do actually submit an application if you're not a member. But if you're not a member, you can, of course, go read and have a look at all the projects that are coming through and reach out to people to collaborate with them. If you've not had a chance to have a look at the webpage, then do go have a little look. There's lots of information on there, and it's really helpful to be able to have a look at some older ideas, what's already going on, what has been funded. When you go to log on onto the Q page, if you've forgotten your website, if you've forgotten your password, don't worry, because if you click the log on bit, you can use the lost your password link, and that should send you an email to your email address, and then you can go create a new password. If you haven't logged on for a while and you think that maybe your email address has changed, not to worry at all, drop us a line at the Central Q inbox and we can help you to update your details to make sure that you can get logged on. Super. So on to the next slide, please, Sarah. So when you land on the Q Exchange pages, there's lots of lovely buttons that you can click through and get different bits of information. So you can see how it works, which is really handy because it takes you to the applicant guidance, which is all the information that you need, including what kinds of projects will be considered, who the project should benefit, and some guidance on what isn't eligible, which is always handy to be able to see in case you're thinking about your project and your budget and you say, oh, hang on, let's take that bit out, we can make changes here. It also has information on how your project will be assessed by the shortlisting panels, which is very helpful because obviously you want to make sure that the assessors are getting all the information that they need so they can assess your project and say, yeah, this should be progressed. Lovely. So if we go on to the next slide then, please, Sarah. Super. So next to the How It Works button is Add Your Idea. And this is where you get taken to the actual form to fill in, which becomes your application form and is presented on the website with your project, so that everyone can read all the different bits of information and see everything that you're aiming to do with your project. When you have a look through, it's got different sections. It's got like the title, and there's a space to put an image, things like that. Next to each of the questions or the statements with the box where you put your text, it says required to publish at this stage. So we are in the ideas stage. So you don't need to put all of the information in just now. So if you spot that required to publish in the brackets, then you can then make sure that you've got that information and then you can pop it on the website. You can always edit this and make changes later. So if you decide, oh no, that doesn't quite fit, that's not quite the description I was after, or if you want to make a change to the title, then that's absolutely fine. You can do that later. We would say that it's really, really great if you could keep your ideas nice and snappy and easy to read. That's really helpful. So short sentences are really helpful rather than really long ones, so that people can skim through and get the information that they need. And do avoid using jargon and acronyms. They're always tricky. We do fall into it really easily. We certainly do it here at Q. But the problem is with acronyms, they can mean different things in different places. So you might end up getting some very confused people looking at your proposal and thinking, oh, I don't know what that means. At this stage, you can create as many different ideas as you would like. And you can get them all on the website, and you can get all the input that you want from the community, helping you to develop those ideas and make them more interesting and more attuned to what is needed in the community. But you can only take one final idea through as a proposal. You can only submit one proposal. But pop your ideas up, you might have several, and then you can decide which one you think is the most promising, which one you've had good feedback on, and go from there. Next slide, please, Sarah. Lovely. So you have the option to add an image, as I mentioned earlier. So this is really helpful. When there's a lot of ideas, it can really help people to scroll through and spot your idea quite quickly if you've got a picture that really works for your project. So I would say have a little think, and you can always publish without a picture and then add one later. That's absolutely fine. But I know that when I look at previous rounds projects, I look for the pictures. I'm like, oh yeah, what's that project with that picture? I'm a very visual learner, so it helps me, but I know that lots of people are also visual learners. So we do recommend that you pop an image in. If you don't pop one in, you'll have a little light bulb image. So that's absolutely fine. It won't be a blank space. Super, on to the next one. Thanks, Sarah. So when you've added your idea, this is how it will look in the list. So you'll see at the top there, all ideas 2022. So this is last year's. So the year will change for Q Exchange 5, and then you'll be able to spot your idea. You've got the title on the left, the picture there, the short description, and the people in the team. This is where it can be really nice to add a picture to your profile if you haven't already, so that people can put a face to the name and they know who you are, and they're like, oh yes, I recognise that person. So that's really helpful. And I do think that it's always nice to see who you're chatting to if you do want to leave messages for people, which is what you can do in the comments section. So on to the next slide, please. Super. So the comments section. At the bottom, people can leave comments and they can say, it's a lovely idea, or, oh, this really links to something that I heard about somewhere else, and they can link you to other things. It's really great to help you think about where your project could go, expand on it, collaborate, maybe make new teammates that you could invite in. And it looks like this on the left. It's a bit of a tiny picture, so I would say go and have a little look at how comments look from last year's. You can reply to people, or you can just post a comment yourself. And it's a nice way to be able to interact with the community. We do realise that sometimes these messages go offline and people just email directly, but also it's quite helpful if you are making changes to your project, then people can look through the comments and see what's influencing you, what's made you change, and perhaps they'll find some really helpful information that they didn't know for their projects. So we're hoping that it's a really great way to collaborate and really share information. Super. And yes, on the right there, you do need to be logged in to leave a comment as well, just to remind you. If you're not a member, I'm afraid it is too late to apply to this round of Q Exchange. But you can join as a guest and you can still get involved and work with projects who are posting ideas. Lovely. I'm going to hand over to Sarah now, who's going to take you through the next bit.
Thank you, Beth. So yeah, a big part of Q Exchange is obviously connecting with the Q community and getting feedback and thoughts on your idea. So as Beth mentioned, one of the main ways we'd encourage you to do this is through comments on your project page. So yeah, once your project is live, members will be able to post comments, and these will appear at the bottom, as Beth mentioned. And yeah, as you can see from the screenshot, the types of comments you receive, it could be members showing their enthusiasm or support for your idea. It could be people working in similar areas who can offer contributions, or it could be someone pointing you towards a special interest group, which are called SIGs, other online groups, or other ideas you could link up with. And yeah, it's a good idea to keep an eye on the comments, reply to people where you can. And whilst the comments themselves don't form part of the assessment criteria, assessors do like to see that you've been engaging with people in the community. So this is a really nice, clear way that you can kind of demonstrate that. So yeah, another great way of connecting with the community on your Q Exchange idea is utilising the online groups and SIGs. And their members. So there's currently around 104 online groups in total. So you should definitely be able to find at least a few that are relevant or related to your projects. And on the website, you can, as we've highlighted, you can order this list by last active, most members, or alphabetical. You can also filter by area of interest or do a keyword search. I guess just one thing to know if you're engaging with the groups is just to kind of like engage like meaningfully with them. So perhaps like try and only post in groups that you're already a member of, or that have like a link or connection to your project idea. And then try and ask for kind of like specific feedback or input from members when you do post in there. However, if you do look through and find a group that looks related, you can join or request to join. Alternatively, if you're already part of any online groups, you can engage with colleagues in there and request their help or ask them to contribute via comments. Also, just to let you know, we're creating a short video to support you with meaningfully engaging with SIGs. So we'll share that with you later on when we follow up with the recording from this session. And then just a just a quick reminder on some of the key dates that are coming up. So you have until Tuesday, the 7th of March to publish your idea on the website. So your idea doesn't need to be fully formed, and you can still be developing your idea at this stage. And then between Tuesday, the 7th of March and Tuesday, the 28th of March, you have the opportunity to refine your idea, gain that input from the community, and then submit your proposal. And the deadline for submitting proposals is midday on Tuesday, the 28th of March. And yeah, just a reminder, if you upload an idea, you don't have to convert this into a proposal, but you do need to have an idea uploaded in order to convert it into a final proposal by the 28th of March deadline. And as Beth mentioned earlier on, you can have like multiple ideas, but you can only then convert one of those into a final proposal. Yeah, that's it for me. I'm going to hand back to Tanya now.
Thanks, Sarah. I'm hoping that people can hear me a bit clearer. Apologies in advance. I think my headphones are maybe not quite working so well this morning. So thank you. I hope that was all really helpful. Just to kind of reiterate, a lot of that information is on the Q Exchange homepage, so please don't worry if you're struggling to kind of keep it all in mind. And we will be circulating this recording, so feel free to watch again. So I've got some time now just to talk to you a little bit about what it takes to kind of make sure that your funding bid is clear and well written. And I'll just intro that by saying over quite a substantial period of time, we've been gathering a lot of information on how members write funding bids and what makes them successful. And we've actually worked with some contracted Q members to compile this information into a guide, which we're going to share at the end of this call. And I really encourage you to take some time to look through that so that you're feeling kind of confident about the bid that you go on to submit. So the following slides kind of just summarise some of the key reflections that we've been gathering over time. So I guess the first step in kind of thinking about the design of your project, you really want to think about whether or not your project aligns with the theme. So my colleague Darren will be speaking shortly about the theme, so you'll hear a little bit more about that, but really making sure that the project that you're putting forward does align with what we've said we're interested in this year. You're also going to want to think about how feasible it is that your project will be within available resources. So sometimes I think when we're excited about new work, it can be really easy to underestimate the resource required to deliver the work well. So really take some time to think about that before submitting your final bid. Next slide, please, Sarah. So kind of collaborating, engaging and co-designing. So this is really key to the Q Exchange programme, as I'm sure many of you will know. We think it's what makes Q Exchange really special. It's very much kind of founded on this idea of meaningful collaboration. So we're interested in seeing in your bid how stakeholders, including patients and service users, have been involved in developing your idea. So assessors will be looking out for evidence of that thinking in your bid. So please do keep that in mind. And particularly for those of you that are popping ideas up, think about how that information might be interesting to other Q members that are looking at your idea on the website and wanting to kind of be part of developing your idea in these early stages. And that goes on to the next bullet point, so engaging the Q community. Your fellow members are an amazing resource in developing your idea. So we really encourage you to be explicit in your asks of members. If there is a particular area of your thinking that you want some support in developing, do make use of the amazing expertise that's very much present in this community. Think about, as Sarah said, reaching out to our special interest groups and working with them to develop ideas or bring them into project teams also. Next slide, please, Sarah. So when it comes to writing your proposal, it's helpful to think about who will be doing the writing. So it might be that you are the person who has a clear sense of the project, but that you don't have the capacity to write the proposal, or even the experience that you think might be required to write the proposal. So do think about finding someone within your project team who can support you in communicating your idea really clearly. And going on to that, we've got here, write in plain English. There can be a temptation to kind of really dress up our ideas, and actually we're not looking for that. We're looking for good ideas that are well communicated. So simplifying what it is you're proposing doing is actually a great start. And then the next one, making the case for your project. So your aim statement and case for change. Make sure that that is really, really clear for assessors. We want to understand what it is you're proposing and why. So keep that in mind and have that guide you through your writing. Next slide, please, Sarah. So budget. This links to what I said earlier on about kind of really making informed choices about the resource required to deliver your project. So we would like to see a detailed budget. It's really important that you read the guidance that we provide on submitting that budget. Please do take the time to think about whether or not the resource needed to deliver your project is reflected in the budget that you're submitting. And please do detail the costs of recruitment and backfill. That's really, really key. What you don't need to do is include budget for existing staff delivery roles. Next slide, please, Sarah. Evaluation. So this is something that we're really, really interested in. So how are you planning on measuring the progress and impact through the duration of your delivery and also afterwards? We'd love to see you thinking about that as early on in the process as possible. And how are you planning on gathering insight and sharing learning, again, during the delivery of your project and actually after your kind of formal award period ends? We do offer support from the evaluation SIG. We have a really great evaluation support offer that we just feel, and we've heard from previously funded teams, that it can be a really helpful way of keeping evaluation in mind as you're delivering. And we are actually at the moment talking with Emma Gibbard, who kind of coordinates that learning offer, about bringing in some evaluation support at an earlier stage, so actually before you go on to submit your final bids, because we'd like to see the presence of that evaluation thinking in your bid. So we want to know that you're keeping that in mind from the very beginning and not just at the very end. Okay, next slide. Thank you, Sarah. So I'm going to go on now to pass over to Darren, who will talk about this year's Q Exchange 5 theme.
Hello, thank you very much, Tanya. We're both in the same room, so we just need to manage our sort of who's speaking when and where sound's coming out of the speakers, and I think it's all fine because I can hear no feedback, so that's excellent. Sarah, could I have the next slide, please? I've come along to talk to you about what the theme of Q Exchange is this year. I don't know how many of you will know about the thematic working that we've been doing across Q, but over the last couple of years and going into next year, we've picked particular themes that we're trying to focus all of our work around. And those themes are intended to sort of resonate with the challenges that exist in the health and systems across our various different countries and different parts of the country. So last year, you'll remember that we had a Q Exchange focus on bringing the worlds of improvement and digital together. This year, we're looking at some of the challenges that are particularly around delayed access to care and reducing waits and backlogs. This is a message that came through particularly strongly over the last year, talking to people within systems, talking to people within different organisations, that it's a lot of the focus of their day-to-day work. And we wanted to connect this funding opportunity with people's day-to-day work, just so we can show relevance to the organisations that people work within. What we didn't want to do is be particularly prescriptive about the areas of delayed access and the areas of waits that people focus on, because it's a very complex issue that particularly affects many organisations where they come together, and we feel that you're probably best placed to understand what the issues around waits, what the root causes around waits are, and what the potential solutions are. So we've come up with a headline question, which is, how can improvement be used to reduce delays accessing health and care services? And we've got a sort of sub category there around reducing delays sustainably and equitably. One of the things we want to focus on in this across all of our work in Q, but particularly within Q Exchange, is not just work to purely bring numbers down on waiting lists. What we want to sort of see examples of are those ideas and innovations, or even scaling up original existing bits of work that bring down waits and reduce delays to access to care sustainably and equitably. So how are you focusing on the usually marginalised communities that are waiting? How do you actually change the way that systems and organisations work to make the reduction in wait sustainable rather than just purely applying more capacity? We feel that improvement is going to be a fundamental element of trying to make a sustainable approach to reducing waiting lists. And we feel that there's so much knowledge and experience locked up in the improvement community that we'd like to release through the Q Exchange programme. So we're looking at things around redesigning care that makes the best use of the skills and experience that sit within organisations, so very much bottom-up approaches to dealing with the problems that are in front of people. Understanding how the different elements of the system come together. We know that a lot of the causes of waits are the handovers of individuals from one organisation to another. So how do we make systems work more efficiently and work effectively? And how are waiting lists prioritised? And I think that's a really important issue when we look at the equity of the people that are waiting, and how we sort of improve the access to different communities and different people within systems. But also about empowering and engaging the workforce to come up with solutions around this. And I think we're all experienced of the top-down solutions that have been imposed on organisations and systems, but we know that the answers sit within organisations, and we'd really be interested in releasing those through Q Exchange. But also stressing again that this is not entirely about innovation. There are lots of good ideas out there that need to be scaled and need to be integrated across different organisations. We're really interested in those as well. So it's taking what we know and putting it into new settings and making it sustainable is really, really important for us. That's it as an outline to the theme for this year. I noticed that we've got some comments coming through there. Oh, should we save those for the questions?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Okay, I think I'm back. Thank you so much, Daz. Some of you may have questions about the theme specifically, and just a reminder that we will have some time for questions very shortly. Just very briefly, I noticed in the chat, and I think that Beth might have responded, but just to reiterate that if you're joining this call and you're not currently a Q member, it does mean that the deadline for submitting a bid as a project lead for you has passed. It doesn't mean, however, that you can't still be part of submitting a bid. It just means that you would need to be part of the project team and find an alternative person who is already a Q member to project lead the work. And you will still be able to apply to become a member in due course. But we can talk a little bit more about that if anyone has any questions about that specifically in a little while. So I just thought I'd talk very briefly before we go on to the Q&A about some key resources that we have been putting together and hope will be helpful. Next slide, please. So the first one is, if you aren't familiar with our kind of main Q Exchange homepage, please do spend a little bit of time just having a look around. That's a really good place to start in familiarising yourself with the programme, with what inspired the programme and what we're trying to achieve with the Q Exchange funding programme. We also have an application guidance resource for you as well. I mentioned this earlier on. It's a more in-depth version of the few slides that I talked you through about what we feel kind of makes for a really helpful funding bid. So there's the application guidance and also the how to write a Q funding bid, and together that should give you a really nice overview of some of the practical steps that Sarah and Beth talked you through earlier on, and also some of the more kind of detailed thoughts around what we like to see in a bid. And another resource that's very helpful is actually just looking at projects we have funded previously. So through the website, you will be able to look back at kind of all of the projects that we funded from the very first Q Exchange, so 2018. Do take some time just having a look, and Also, I'd recommend that you have a look at the members that were involved in delivering that work, and perhaps just if you're a Q member, you'll have access to the member directory, but just reach out to them, ask their thoughts. A number of them have posted project updates at the very bottom of their kind of Q Exchange project page. Have a read through, look at what they were sharing about their experiences of delivering, because all of those things could be very helpful for you when it comes to submitting your own bid, and also helpful for you as a resource to return to when it comes to delivering if you go on to be awarded funding. I am going to stop there because I want us to have a good amount of time for a Q&A, and I can see lots of questions already kind of bubbling in the chat. We will probably split answering these questions between us as a project team, so colleagues, do feel free to jump in. It'll be difficult for me not to have missed anything in the chat, so if anyone wants to unmute perhaps and ask their question again, that might be the clearest way to go. And I know some of the questions in the chat are being answered by some in the team, but do kind of raise a hand or just unmute if you have a question. I'm going to come to the first hand that I've spotted, which is Alison Bolton.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Just this might feel somewhat random and is somewhat peculiar to my role. I cover 3 organisations, and I am a Q member. I'm not confident that there are Q members in each of my 3 organisations. So can I, as an individual, apply on behalf of 3 individual organisations?
I can answer that one for you, Alison.
Thank you.
Yeah, so you can only apply from one organisation. So you are the representative of your organisation,
Yes.
but then what you then choose to do as a partnership is absolutely fine, up to you. The funding would be paid to one organisation, and then if you're making up a project team from across different ones, that is no problem at all for us. You would just work out how to split your budget and where all your team are coming from, and you'd have one person to sign it off. So yeah, if you've got questions about that, that's quite the award agreement side of it, but yeah, absolutely, we can find something that would work for you. I was just going to mention as well that you can't be a for-profit organisation, so you can't be a private organisation. So if it's a community organisation or a hospital, NHS, all the other ones, they're absolutely fine. Does that answer your question?
Sort of, but I think I might drop you a line outside of here to explain the scenario so that we can get into it a bit more. But thank you.
Absolutely, yeah. I was going to piggyback off that question as well to say that on the membership list on the Q website, you can search by individuals, which is great, but we do have 5,000 members, so it's a bit tricky to go through them all. But you can pop in the keyword search your organisation name, and you might come across people who are, gosh, I didn't know that Bob over there was a Q member. I'd love to reach out to them and work with them. So even if you're not a member, that doesn't mean that you can't be part of a project team, you can't feed in and you can't work with each other to get a really great idea through. So yeah, and if you are struggling with the membership list online, which sometimes people do, then do reach out and we can give you a hand.
Great, thanks, Ben. I'm going to hand over to Daz because I think he's spotting some questions about the theme, so I'll pass over to you, Daz.
Hello. Yeah, I saw questions from Claire and Carla asking whether particular areas are excluded from this. And I think the things I noted there were social care and primary care and some of the stuff around wider determinants of health. I think that's something I should have mentioned. No, we're not excluding any areas because the complexity of weights means that weights are spreading across organisations, spreading across organisation types. So yeah, when you've got an example of a particular issue around delayed discharge into social care, I think that fits directly under what we're trying to sort of address within this, particularly access to primary care and then access from primary care into acute care. We want to be led by you about where you see the pressure around weights and delayed access to care is in the system, rather than us being prescriptive and saying that we're not going to fund things. So that's why we've gone out of our way to try and avoid putting the types of weights that we've identified through our insight work and to have a much more sort of approach around the principles of weights rather than organisation types. I hope that helps.
Thanks, Daz. I can see a hand up. Clifford, will come to you.
Yeah, hi, thank you. So hi everyone, my name is Clifford Mitchell and I'm one of the Senior Improvement Advisors within HSC QI in Northern Ireland. So we would be like a national QI body, but also connected to Q. So I suppose my question is, firstly, I suppose we're starting to really focus on, I've seen their talk around, you know, focusing on spread and scale, or scale and spread, and empowering organizations and teams. So we're really moving towards that. So I suppose firstly my question is it okay for us to apply from a regional level? So we're running a regional program focusing on scale and spread and on empowering organizations and teams, so that would be okay, yeah?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I'd say so. And I think Daz is nodding too, Clifford. That wouldn't be a problem.
Perfect.
Yeah. Thank you for the question. There's a really great point in the chat that I just wanted to flag. It might have been already from Liz. There are a number of you who kind of maybe a little bit concerned about not being Q members. And we just want to assure you there are lots of ways that you can kind of navigate that. And a great suggestion from Liz is reaching out to your regional AHSNs or improvement bodies, who will be a great link to Q members that you might otherwise not be connected with. So as Joram says, you know, do kind of look at ways that you can identify members that would actually be great additions to your project team and who could kind of project lead. Yeah, please don't let that deter you. Any other questions that anyone in the project team has spotted and wants to respond to as well? There are lots here. Also just encouraging you all to do pop a hand up if you've asked something that hasn't been covered yet, because it can be difficult when the chat is particularly active to cover everything. And thank you, Beth. Beth just posted a link to our member directory as well. Chrissy, I don't know if your question's been answered in some of the responses we've had so far. So we are based in South Wales. We'd like to tackle the root cause of mental health difficulties at a community population level. We're not a Q member and we're looking to find a Q member partner to work with. Happy to have a chat. So if anyone on the call is interested, please do reach out to Chrissy. But Chrissy, again, it might be helpful to think about other regional links who might have connections with existing members already. There's a question here, Daz, that maybe might be good for you. Does the project have to get to the intervention testing stage, or can it be limited to evaluation, supporting a better understanding? Any thoughts on that one, Daz?
Yeah, I think it's legitimate to create a project that gives us better understanding of the root causes around waits and delayed access to care. I think that's...
Tanya, you need to mute yourself or else we hear Daz twice.
Oh, can you
mute your... Sorry about that. I have another go. Yeah, I think it's entirely legitimate to be able to come up with a project that gives us much better understanding of the root causes around waits and root causes around delayed access to care. So evaluation and better insight is entirely within the scope of this project.
Thanks, Daz. Just for those that might have missed Amber's question, which might apply to some of you, what is the timescale for the delivery of the projects you choose to fund? Do they have to be completed by March 2024? So we're funding you for a year of delivery, and so in terms of our relationship with you, or kind of core relationship, that will be across a year, and that will start at the time that you complete your award agreements with Sarah and Beth. But that doesn't mean that your project has to be wrapped up within that time. We definitely don't expect that. And we really encourage you to stay connected with us and with Q members in sharing how your project develops. So yeah, please don't feel that you'd have to deliver your whole project within a 12-month period, because that's unlikely to be the case, particularly if you encounter delays, and that's not an issue. But we fund you for 1 year, so the award agreement will go across 1 year. And any support offers that we put in place will also run across that year as well. I might just talk a little bit about that. I mentioned it briefly earlier on. But we do offer award holders support with evaluation and also action learning sets. So we have that kind of peer support structure that runs the whole way through the award period as well to support you in delivery. I'm just looking at anything else. Hi David, lovely to see you. David had a question about the deadline for idea submission because he's getting some feedback that it's a bit tight for some. So there isn't, at the moment, we've not factored in leeway for idea submissions specifically, but do remember that we have kind of two phases. So there's the idea stage, which is kind of what's going on now, where you put your initial idea up and you're getting people's thoughts and you're developing it. And then refinement begins on the 7th of March, and that actually runs all the way through to the 28th of March. So even if you get a rough idea up, you then have that period from the 7th right through to the 28th of March to actually really refine it and then submit your final bid. So just to stress again, you do not need to put up a perfectly polished idea onto the website. You just need to get something up there as part of this idea stage, get members talking about it and feeding in, and then refinement of that idea begins on the 7th, and you have all the way until the 28th of March to turn that into a proposal that you then submit. So I hope that that's helpful. Anyone else in the project team noticing questions that I... Okay, I'm gonna, can I pass over to you, Daz? I don't know if I've got that one.
I was just going to mention as well that Maria and Liz have both got their hands up as well.
Maria, would you like to go?
Oh, hello. Thank you. So yes, I just have a question with regard to formulating the proposal. If the idea of the proposal is straightforward and very clear, the whole rationale of the proposal. However, if there are if there's lack of knowledge regarding the use of automated systems to pull data, which is part of the proposal, and it is needed for the application, is this disadvantage? Is it a disadvantage for the application, or there is help regarding how to pull data? And specifically, I'm talking about data from the primary care systems, from the primary care sector.
I think it's legitimate to sort of put in your application where there are gaps in the knowledge. And I think there's two approaches to try and fill those gaps. It's either trying to seek the support from other people in the community that might be able to sort of understand how they solve those, trying to identify different projects that might sort of connect to that, or saying that an element of the funding that you're seeking will try and get a better understanding and try and solve those things. But the fact that, well, no one is going to penalise you for not having an understanding about how to get data out of primary care, because I think it's a common problem we're all trying to manage at the moment. So no, you won't be penalised for identifying things that are a core aspect of your project that you want to take forward. So yeah, and I think it is particularly useful to stress the things that you don't know, because we are a community and people do know the answers to these things. And I think it's having an overly polished idea and not admitting there are potential problems. That's, you know, that's the opportunity to build connections with people and to strengthen the bid with different people that you can come across in the community.
Thank you. That was overall my question. Very helpful. Thank you so much.
Excellent. And Liz, you got a question?
Hi, yes I do. So I have a project that I'm involved with an acute trust, but it's a tool that they're looking to adopt, which looks at it improves communication to help stop waits happening actually on hospital wards, so waits for treatment, decisions being made, all sorts of things, which has an impact on improves length of stay, which then hopefully has a knock-on effect of access into the hospital and to elective like surgery if we're on an elective ward. So I'm just wondering, because it doesn't have a direct impact on access, would it still qualify?
Yeah, I can see a direct impact on access within that, because some of the things that are causing waits are really around process and refining process, and a lot of that is around data moving from one organisation to another. I think that's directly applicable, but I think also you feeding into the thing that I was saying there about trying to adopt something that we know works and being able to scale that rather than coming up with a new idea from scratch is entirely in line with the aspirations around Q Exchange for this year.
Great, thank you very much.
Thank you.
I know a few people have had to drop off, which is fine. Thank you for joining. Any other questions that haven't been answered, or it might be that you posted something earlier on and it was answered and it's kind of now triggered a new question. If you don't mind popping a hand up, and then we can make sure we're not missing you. Okay. So I can't see any more hands up, but Beth has just put our Q Exchange email address in the chat. So if anything comes to mind after today's call, please do feel free to get in touch. Just to reiterate, we will be sharing this recording along with some of the key resources that we've referenced via email towards the end of this week or start of next week. Information around application guidance is actually already on the website. I think we've shared the link already, and that includes the funding criteria information that I think someone may have requested earlier on. But again, all of that information will be shared in the email that we send out later on this week. If there aren't any other questions, just to again thank you for your time. We're going to ask you for some feedback in a second, but also just to reiterate that we're really aware of the time constraints that everyone is facing at the moment, and we recognise that you might go away from this call and think, actually I don't have the capacity to engage in Q Exchange in this particular way in terms of submitting an idea. But there will be lots of other ways that you can also engage in Q Exchange, and we'll share some information about other ways you can kind of contribute to the process in the email that we send out as well, because those ways are equally just as valuable. But we do really hope that we see lots of you submitting final proposals. Already just hearing some of your questions, there's such a great range of ideas that some of you are already holding. So thank you for sharing those. We'd love to support you as best as we can. Before you drop off, it would be really good to get some feedback from you, because we want to know how we can make these sessions as informative and helpful as possible. So if we could do in the chat a www, so a what went well, so something about this session that you have found beneficial, that you've enjoyed, and also an even better if, an EBI, something that we could have done differently, that we might tweak slightly. We really appreciate it. So a what went well and an even better if in the chat before we bid you farewell. So for those of you that need to jump off, thank you so much for your time. Do get in touch with us if you have any questions or reflections. Good luck with submitting your bids. Take good care of yourselves. And thank you again for taking the time to be with us today. It's great to see so many of you. Have a lovely rest of your week. Thank you.